Hello, welcome to the show, 15 Minutes of Fame with Dawn Branch. I'd like to say thank you to my sponsors, twinkletoesapparel.com in Georgia. These wonderful sandals that say Twinkle Toes. And they also have leotards and tights, all the wonderful accessories, even charcoal pouches that you can place into your dance bag. We have a new sponsor tonight, Spirit and the Word Ministries. My friend Pastor Herrera and his lovely wife, Minister Kim Herrera. They gave me this wonderful bag. Isn't it nice? So I'll put my dance stuff in here. Put my choco. Look, leotards. Well, I'm not wearing leotards, but you know what I mean. My dance stuff. Thank you, Spirit and the Word Ministries, and thank you for watching the show. Hi. 15 Minutes of Fame is looking for you. So if you're an industry professional and you want to share your journey, contact me at dawnbranchworks@gmail.com and we'll get your story shared right away. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aurora Notches, and I will be playing the part of Eve in Eden 2022. I am incredibly excited about playing Eve again. I played Eve in 2019 and then was set to do it in 2020 when the show was canceled. And so when Dawn called me and we talked about it for 2022, I was beyond excited to come back and play this part that I love.
2018, I was in the garden scene, the contemporary, and the praise section. And in 2019, I was in the sunburst, praise, and contemporary section. Well, Dawn's choreography is very hard-hitting and fast. And so with the long rehearsal days, it really pushes my stamina and just my emotional levels. So I'm like, if I can make it through this, I can make it through a lot.
So many things I love about Eden. I have been a part of the show for years. Even before I played Eve, I was still in the show in other roles. And so for me, Eden is home. Eden is where everyone comes, everyone gathers, and it's a family. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that separates Eden even from other shows, other ballets, other productions.
Three, two, one.
Here we go!
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 15 Minutes of Fame with Dawn Branch, where we bring industry professionals into your home, where they share their secrets of their success with you. Tonight's guest is Mwalim Peters. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, doing well.
Did I
How about
say it? Mwalim.
you? Got it right.
I don't know why I want to do this when I say Mwalim.
Uh,
You
uh,
are.
You can imagine doing open mics with a name like that. And
Oh.
next up we have Ma. Oh, that's me. Yeah.
Yes. And I want to know about the transformation into that name because you are Morgan, yes,
Mhm.
but now we're talking to Mwalim, the professional. So welcome to the show.
All right, thank you. But actually, you're talking to both of us. I'm a Gemini, so I can have both voices at the same time. So,
I love it. Yes.
so if
So
you hear an on my end, I'm good.
you're an accomplished author, screenwriter, poet. Let's start from the beginning. How did you know you were special? Like, what age did you realize I'm a little different in terms of creativity?
Well, for the better part of my life, I was told I was weird. So that kind of helps you know you're different. Um, my imagination. Now this was the funny thing. I was the weird kid everybody wanted to play with because I could come up with the best games. And it was funny because I remember incident when we were in high school, a bunch of us were playing Dungeons and Dragons where we used the subway, and the rule was you couldn't leave Manhattan. You couldn't leave the subway and you couldn't leave Manhattan, but we did Dungeons and Dragons that way. But games like that were the kinds of things I did as a kid, early on. So creativity, I guess that's where the storyteller side developed. And of course, that comes from coming from a family of storytellers, basically on both sides.
Okay, are
Storytellers.
you the only child? So you had to like create things?
I'm the youngest.
Oh, you're the youngest. How many siblings?
I have an older brother, and he's 12 years older than me. So yeah, you kind of, when you have that kind of a gap, you are kind of the only child. And I'm my mother's only child.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, the imagination factor just has always been a big thing. Has always been something that I guess you could say has been not. I would say has never really been discouraged.
Mhm.
So that was the piece. And
Mhm.
the music side, my mother's family, 5 generations, well, actually, I should say 4 generations back. I'm number 5, but 4 generations back of musicians. So there was always,
Okay, stop. Let us know. Who are they? Famous people. Famous
oh,
people.
okay. My grandfather came here from Barbados, and he was trained as a concert pianist, came here, found out Black men are not concert pianists. So he worked his way up. He became a band leader and a producer for initially Decca Records, and
I
then
heard.
one
Sorry.
for Southern Records, which was a offshoot of Decca. And he was in the Brill Building. You know, people who don't know their New York history, the Brill Building.
Yeah.
Check out the Brill Building, 49th
Mhm.
Street. But he was a regular in there with the union. He led a band. Now the thing about him, he refused to play below Philadelphia.
Did you say the union?
Musicians Union, 802.
They allowed him in. This is huge. And I just have to say this because coming from New York, it's so hard to get any representation as a brown person, especially back in those days. And for you to
Well,
say that,
they had a segregated union. A lot of people don't know that. The union was
that's it. Okay, you got to let us know. Teaching platform,
and
teaching platform.
okay, well, in fact, the interesting thing about the union in those days was that because it was segregated, the Black musicians got looked out for better then than they did when the union became integrated in the 70s, because of the fact that we had our own
Yeah.
branch of the 802. But nonetheless, but one of the things with him was he refused to play below Philadelphia because of Jim Crow, because of segregation, because of the laws. He's like, so the Catskills, for example, the resorts of what the Poconos and so forth, that was basically his territory for his band and his sound. My mother is an opera singer. She sang. They closed a few years ago, and it was kind of sad. About maybe 10 years ago, I saw the building was up for sale, but she was with the Amato Opera Company, which was in the Village, and sang with them for a number of years. So grew up with music in the house.
Do you think? Wow. So was your mom your first teacher?
I would say my first exposure to music.
Mhm.
She was not really per se a music teacher. Now, my grandfather was actually the one who taught me to play piano. I started studying piano with him when I was about 14 or so. I was already at music and art when I started with him. And the interest there was I wanted to write music. I'd been playing and I played at that point. First instrument I started when I was about 10 was the viola, and loved the viola. And that was what I got in. That's what I got into. Actually got into both music and art and performing arts with the viola. And the only reason, honestly, I didn't go to performing arts was
Wait,
because.
I want to go back. I want to go back. Again, this is a teaching platform. So what I want to
Gotcha.
get from this answer, because there might be a student out there saying, I'm a little different. I want to create my own music. I want to know, what was it about the music that you were listening to that you said, I have something to contribute? I feel like I have something to say. Like, what was it in you?
Well, one thing, I'm glad you asked that question. One thing about where I grew up in the Bronx.
Up in the Bronx. I'm sorry.
Yep, up in the and way, way up. And I was way, 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 way up in the Bronx where the people are fresh. There.
Yes. One DJ. We're gonna keep going. All right, I'm sorry.
but
Go ahead.
but what I grew up in Co-op City, which was very, very, very used to be very diverse, very, very diverse. So in one building, you would hear R&B, you would hear soca, calypso, you would hear dance hall, you would hear klezmer, you know, Eastern European Jewish jazz. You would hear all in the same building. You would hear Aerosmith, you would hear Led Zeppelin. So you're hearing all of this music. And again, coming from a music family, all of these things are going to speak to you. You know, you turn the dial back then. What were our radio stations? KTU.
WBLS.
Yes, WBLS.
92 KTU. Oh Lord.
Back in the day with
Yeah.
Carlos de Jesus and Roscoe.
98.7 Kids. I don't even know if they're still out, but okay.
Yeah, I think they ended up getting bought out or something. But you know, but you look at all of those radio stations, but then at the same time you have WAPP. You know, you
know
have
what goes in my head. WAP. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna focus. I'm focusing, guys. Please, God, don't mind me.
No worries, no worries. But
Sorry.
but like just hearing all of that, and then it's sort of like you then hear melodies in your head that you're not hearing on the radio.
Boom, stop. Okay, melodies in your head that you're not hearing. So you just have a whole universe in your head happening simultaneously as you're walking and speaking. It's like things are playing. Crazy. Is that happening right now?
Mhm.
Do you hear? Wow. Can't turn it off.
Not at all.
Amazing. Okay, I'm sorry. That's
at all.
intriguing to me. I'm sorry. Okay.
My poor son has the same affliction, actually worse. He's a Gemini too, so you know, like, I guess that might be why.
Okay.
But
Please continue. I'm sorry.
oh, no worries, no worries. But so it was a matter of when you play the viola, you're playing melody, you're playing single lines, and I realized that music is built around harmonies. And in order to have harmonies, you had to have an instrument that plays chords. And here's a funny go back. The guitar. I never learned. I just actually literally 2 weeks ago learned to play the guitar. Never played a guitar before, and realized that. And of course, now that I'm learning the guitar, I'm like, wow, this is a ridiculously easy instrument. I should learn this thing first. But that's the instrument that a lot of people learn chords on first. This is where, and I'll go into that when we talk about Black history. But
Black History Month.
This is it. This is it. But learning to play the piano then opened up the ability to now play the harmonies against the chords and figure out the harmonies against the chords. And my grandfather was the best man to go to, so that was where I went.
How was he as a teacher?
Wonderful. He was,
How so? He was kind. He was patient.
He was kind, and he met you where you are and where you want to go with it. It wasn't, this is the way you learn, this is the way you structure. It was kind of like, okay. And so it was sort of like addressing what you want to learn on the piano to what it is you want to learn. I wanted to play R&B. I wanted to play jazz. I already had my classical instrument. I wanted to play the instrument that like dealt more with the music that I was really interested in. And he understood that, so taught me piano that way. And we also, because he lived in Corona, Queens, and I lived way up in the Bronx. So I ended up not really having a lot of piano lessons with him, but it's sort of like, I think altogether, I probably over a 2-year period had about maybe 10 lessons. Mm-hmm. But with each lesson, he'd give me material to take home and work on it the next time. And so that was the beginning of my studying piano.
Thank you. Well, I always love to give flowers. So your grandfather's full name, if you don't mind, and we honor him.
Alan Howard Nurse II.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Nurse, for contributing. So, okay, so now you are teenagerish, kind of. You never wanted to rap growing up in the Bronx with all, because that was the time when it was all coming out when we were like teenagers.
Oh, this is the funny thing. I was more about the music.
Okay.
Like
Were you creating beats for rappers? I'm trying to like
I
figure
was,
out.
or I was more. I would say I was more so paying attention to the beats. Um, like this might sound funny.
Mm,
It was years before, or a couple of years before, I realized that Planet Rock and Play at Your Own Risk were actually supposed to be two different records because the background was virtually the same. And I'm busy listening to how they're able to get the drum to hit that hard. How, and of course, because at that age, I don't know about drum machines. So I'm
mhm.
thinking, this is a drummer slamming the drum with a tree or something. And but I'm listening to that. I'm listening to the synthesized bass lines. I'm listening to all the interesting pieces like that. I probably could not have told you the words to Planet Rock. I just knew that there were people saying stuff over this incredible beat. But that, that was always the case for me with music. It was like I'd learn, and it's kind of funny being a singer with a band because for me it was I always learned the words last.
Right.
That, oh yeah, that's right. There are lyrics to this. I mean, find
That's
out
so
what those are.
funny. Let's talk about Carnegie Hall. That's something else that's amazing, sir. How does a young teenager at 14 perform at Carnegie Hall?
They joined the Borough-wide Orchestra the year the year that
That's funny. Okay. Right. Okay.
oh I have to say it's really and you can attest to this.
Hmm.
When you grow up in New York City, there are opportunities that you take for granted because that's just part of being in New York. So you're playing in the Borough-wide Orchestra, and every few years, the different boroughs end up playing at Carnegie Hall. Well, my second year in the Borough-wide Orchestra, which was the year before I started LaGuardia, was the year that the Bronx Borough-wide played Carnegie Hall. So
Okay.
now, to me, that was just sort of like something that happens. But then when you get a publicist who's not from New York City, who hears
Right.
that story, that now becomes part of your bio.
Yes. You're so funny.
Wait a minute, you played Carnegie Hall when you
That's
were 13?
huge. It's huge
Yeah.
even if you lived in New York City. Stop it. Okay. So I want to let's go now into performing arts and music and art. How did you find out about the school? What was your audition process like? And do you remember the songs that you sang or the instruments that you played?
Ah, yes. Actually, can remember all of it. It was funny because it all happened in the same weekend. Um, I had a cousin who went to performing arts many, 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 many years before me, and I knew about music and art just from it was funny. There was a PBS show on, and it was about Harlem, and music and art got talked about in that, and that was what caught my attention. It was like, oh, interesting. There's music and art high school in Harlem. That's cool. What you know.
Mhm.
So I remember going for the audition, and what the audition process, I'm going to say, is what made me choose this between the two schools. Music and art gave you a time to show up for the audition. You showed up for the audition, you filled out the paperwork, they took you upstairs. You were then led into the room, you played your piece, you played whatever the sight reading piece was they gave you, and they sent you home. Performing arts had me show up at 7:30 in the morning. They herded us into a classroom, and we proceeded to sit in that classroom. And I don't think I was auditioned until about 4 o'clock that afternoon. Now, while I'm sitting out in the hall waiting to audition, this teacher, I never had her, so her name does not stick with me, but she was one of the string teachers from PA. I see, I'm sitting in the hall. She comes, she looks out in the hallway, disappears. A few more minutes later, comes, looks out in the hall, disappears. And then by now, there are a few of us in the hall. I'm looking for a Morgan Peters. Has anybody seen her?
Oh, yeah.
So the assumption
Is that when Mwalim came in? I'm Mwalim, dago.
No, that didn't even come in either. But it's funny because you think, you don't even think about it at that point. You just think about the fact that, okay, because of Morgan Fairchild and Morgan Brittany, that, okay, obviously they think this is a girl's name, etc. But you don't even stop and think about the racial dynamic of that. There's no way this black kid could be named Morgan. Now, maybe must be something like, Leroy or Mustafa or whatever. This is the mindset. But anyway, so I was kind of like, yeah, they don't have their thing together here. So I'm gonna go to music and art instead. And that audition experience, I think, was really what did it.
Wow.
Was and I have the bragging rights. So this is one of the funny stories. When I first started in orchestra class in middle school, the teacher did not continue me in the orchestra class into 6th grade because I didn't really have it together. But I ended up taking private lessons on the viola and re-auditioned, and he let me in. And when I graduated in 8th grade, I was one of the 2 recipients of the music medal. So it was sort of like I was the kid who couldn't do it and was like one of his best. But the other piece was I was the only music student who had, actually I would say I was one of 2 music students who had auditioned for both schools and got into both schools.
Nice. Okay. So walk us through like a regular day for you when you were in high school as a young artist in music and art.
Regular day, let's see, 6:30 in the morning, waiting for the bus. Somewhere around 7:30 in the morning, getting off the 28 bus at 205th Street and taking the D train. Now, do I take the D train to 145th and walk from 145th to 135th? Or do I take the D train, transfer to the C or the CC, get off at 135th and run the risk of running through St. Nicholas Park with the muggers? So that was the morning.
Daily stress at such a young age. My goodness. I say this now because these young kids, they have their own cars. They, the Uber. It's just a whole different mindset. Okay.
Big
so
time.
Now you're at school. So how does it? Is it academic in the daytime, classics in afternoon? How is it structured?
It was basically most of your academic subjects in the morning. You had your science, your English, your math. They did sometimes have it so that you ended up with academics capping the day. So you might end up with like your social studies class being your 8th period class, but usually after lunch was when you had strings and or orchestra.
Okay. How did you stand out in high school?
I did not.
You did not? Mister, I hear music in my sleep and I hear words. How could you not?
This was music and art. You don't stand out because you have music in your head. That doesn't make you stand out. You're one of any number of people who are walking around with music in their head. The wonderful thing about music and art was I was not as weird at music and art. In fact, it was funny.
Yes.
Because the funny thing was I had a number of kids who came into music and art from 8th grade, and these were the ones who saw me as weird. They didn't last past the first year at music and art. And some of the ones who did sort of just faded into the background. We're definitely not of the standout, but
okay.
No, I wasn't per se a standout.
You weren't. Okay, that's so funny to me. Okay, so 2 more things, and we're gonna leave music and art alone. Who there would you have considered a mentor? Like who really found you and helped you find your voice? And then also name a few established artists that graduated from music and art.
Okay, I can't narrow it down to one person who helped me find my voice. Because it was like a team effort.
Okay.
The first who comes to mind would have to be Dr. Washington, who was Ms. Washington when she was my teacher, but Dr. Washington definitely. And I would have to say Justin DeChocho.
Okay, I don't know who Justin DeChocho is.
Justin DeChocho was the jazz teacher.
Okay.
at
Okay.
LaGuardia. And trying to think. So you had Justin DeChocho, you had Dr. Washington, you had Mrs. Del Val.
I remember her name. Yes.
She was vocal music, but I had her for
Mm-hmm.
music theory. And she was the person who broke down to me why I had to know music theory. She said, okay, again, those melodies in your head, if you don't know how to write them down, or what value are they going to be to anybody? So she put music theory in perspective for me. So there were a few mentors, and then of course when the schools merged, I would be completely remiss if I did not include Dr. Reich.
Oh my God, Dr. Rice! Don't say that name. I just
I
sweat
would have to be.
every time.
I will tell you what, I'm an English professor right now, and I think there is a big part of what Dr. Reich did as a teacher.
Okay, stop. Give me 3 things that Dr. Rice, because it's a teaching platform, you're going to help someone. Explain, what did he do that made you say, this guy is serious, he's interesting, and I want to be just like him?
I don't want to be just like him, but he was.
Okay.
He was
He
influential.
was oh my God, anyone listening? Dr. Rice, no joke professor, English professor. Okay.
I will say, I became really good at critical writing because of him, where you're going to discuss an idea and you're going to cite, for example. Remember, he used to say that all the time. So the for example, and this now, that he used to do that burns its way into my brain now. I was a 17-year-old in his room. I'm now 53, and I can still hear him saying that. But in terms of the development of critical writing, and even just thing was, I read books for fun. My bus and subway time to and from school was my reading time. And the funny thing is, I'm dyslexic, so it takes me much longer to read a book than most people, but I seem to absorb it longer. But he sort of gave me then an outlet for all of that reading I was doing, where it's like, oh, so this, and this. These are some of the ideas in the book. And so I would say that he was a big influence in that regard. Another person who was encouraging was from the English department, who I think later became head of drama also, was Linda Masson.
Okay.
She was an English teacher, but she was very, very encouraging of my creative writing. And I can say I actually won short story awards from the English department at LaGuardia, and even some citywide awards for creative writing.
Did you do AXO? Was AXO? Did you know about AXO back then?
Didn't know about it.
No. Oh, okay. Okay. Just wondering. Sidebar. Okay. Famous people from our class.
Famous people from our class. Well, one story I can definitely, he was not of our class, he was the year ahead of us, but I remember when Wynton Marsalis came and snatched Sharnette Moffett out of the school. And the next week we saw Sharnette on the Grammys performing with Wynton Marsalis. And then Sharnette went on tour and had to get his GED because he was not coming back to LaGuardia.
Where is he now?
Google jazz, Google Sharnette Moffett, one of the big boys, one of the big boy heavy hitter bass players of jazz.
Awesome. Okay.
But let's see. In our year, Dana Dane, MC Dana Dane.
Now see, I don't quite, I thought he was older than, well, me, I don't know. Okay, anyway, Dana Dane, okay, yes. Okay, go ahead.
Dana Dane, the one who was the year older than us was Slick Rick.
Okay.
Because they were Music and Arts Kango group.
Yes. So you're surrounded by just all of these people. Okay, I love it. All right, and then one more. Who we got?
Oh, there's so many, because it's like
you turn on many, right?
You turn on the TV, and it's like, oh, look.
Right.
I mean, another celebrity like Tuffy Questel, for example.
Yes, Tuffy.
Everybody loves Tuffy. What can you say? But so many people in so many areas. Because, like, for example, you have Justin Bua, who, famous painter. And I remember when he was being admonished for his style by one of the art teachers at Music and Art. And of course, now Justin Bua's, reprints of Justin Bua's stuff sell for hundreds of dollars. So, who got the last laugh in that story?
I have a question about the art department and the music department. Did you guys ever work together on projects?
No.
See, this is something that's engaging to me. Like I would love if they would rethink the process and not isolate each department and have them work together. For example, find a work of this gentleman you just said, and then what sound does that picture make? What words, you know what I'm saying? And y'all collaborate and do something. To me, that's really interesting.
That would be wonderful if LaGuardia was not under the constraints of the Board of Education. As I became an educator, a lot of things that I used to wonder about, why doesn't this happen?
Mhm.
I realized it's not the school's fault. It's not for lack of inspiration. It's you have this very narrow, that they were able to achieve with us what they were able to achieve, given
Right.
the constraints placed on them, is beyond phenomenal.
Great
But
point.
there are so many things, because like one of the one criticism that I have, well, aside from the fact that we had some of the most racist teachers, I think
Oh, okay.
the instrumental music department had probably some of the most overtly racist individuals that to this day I think it's disgusting they were allowed to interact, as talented as they were, that they were allowed to interact with a school body like ours, a demographic like ours, was unfortunate. But in terms of the music education, it was top level. The one critique that I have on the education side is they don't prepare us for the business. When my son said he wanted to go into music, big surprise that he wanted to go into music, and he wanted to go specifically into the music industry. Again, big surprise, he wants to go into the music industry. I explained to him something that was once explained to me that was probably the best explanation of the music business I'd ever heard. He said there are three kinds of people in the music industry. There are pimps, there are hoes, and there are hustlers. You want to be a hustler. And he, when it was explained to me, the metaphor of all three, do you want to be used? Do you want to be used to use others? Or do you want to control the direction of your game? That's the hustler. And the best that Music and Art or LaGuardia prepared people for was to audition, but did not talk about contracts, did not talk about royalties, did not talk about, we were right across the street from ASCAP. Nobody talked
Didn't
about
realize that.
it was like
Okay.
right across the street from Lincoln Center. And nobody ever talked about what is ASCAP? Why does ASCAP exist? You were not encouraged outside of the jazz program, you were not encouraged to be a composer. Unless you were white, by the way.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
So that was that was the interesting thing with that school.
So, okay, so let's segue into education since we're here. We're talking about teachers. Why college for you as opposed to Wynton Marsalis possibly finding you and saying, come work with me? Like, why did you go straight to college as opposed to having a professional career?
Well, not being a Shinette Moffett who gets snatched up by Wynton Marsalis, or Jay Rodriguez who gets snatched up by Miles Davis. In fact, quick funny story, at our 30th reunion.
10. We're gonna edit 10. That out. 10. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. At the 20th celebration of our 10th reunion, we
this is all getting edited out. Go ahead. Yes, carry on.
At the reunion, when we were putting together the stage band for the cabaret.
Yes.
Jay was saying, I didn't really get to have I didn't really get to have the, the full end of year experience like you guys did senior year. I always felt like I was cheated. It was like, I'm like, what happened? April of our senior year, dude gets snatched up to go on tour with Miles Davis. So he missed graduation and the prom to be on tour with Miles Davis.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you poor thing. but, but in terms of like the magnitude of students that we went to school with. So with me, again, not knowing as much about the business side, because, let me backtrack. I started hanging out in recording studios when I was about 16.
With
And
Puffy?
no.
Just so I threw it in there from the Bronx, Mount Vernon. I don't know.
He's from Mount Vernon. He's younger than us. So he would have been a little kid, but no. But
get out of here, Puffy. Get out, little kid.
Yeah. when I was about 16, that was when I started hanging out at recording studios. 30th Street in particular had a building that had like 4 or 5 of them all in the same building. And Planet Studio was in the basement of the building. And what was cool was I went and said, I just want to watch what's going on, hear the session, And if the producers didn't mind, they'd let me sit in the back and watch what was going on. Well, of course, I have my instrument with me because I'm usually coming from school when I'm going to do this. Well, one particular time, they're doing an album, and the guy looks, says, do you play that thing? Yeah. Can you read music? Yeah. Okay, get in there. And put some sheet music in front of me. I'm thinking I'm messing up because they keep having me do take after take after take after take. And he's like, okay, you're all set. And I'm thinking, must not have worked. And when he has me come back in the room, what he had done was layered me. So I'm realizing I'm this one viola player. And of course, when he's giving me the instruction, oh no, play it this way, what he's doing is layering the texture so it sounds like a bunch of different string players. Anyway, so that was even more fascinating to me, but that was my first session gig.
So then you got paid?
He hands me a wad of bills and pushes me out the door. And of course, I'm trying to figure out how am I going to get this money home on the subway. But
okay, so this is perfect. So let's talk about that. You said you had no exposure before this into how the business worked. No one taught you. So how would you have known if you were getting the right amount of money or not? And how would you didn't?
I didn't. It's also he paid me in cash, so I was off the books. These are all things that I learned about years later. So I'm the uncredited string player on I'm trying to remember whose album it was. I think it was why is his name going out of my head?
Because they didn't pay you, and they're making don't advertise for them.
It was on Gregory Hines' album, actually.
It was on Gregory. You would have been a millionaire. Are you kidding me? But let's not blame Gregory Hines. He didn't know about that.
That album virtually tanked. So no, I would not have.
And please, maybe it was because of your viola. I'm kidding. But, yeah. Okay, so how would you have done that differently, knowing what you know now? And what advice do you give young musicians and singers?
Honestly, for a session like that, I made out okay. I mean,
I have concerns. You're a minor. They're just giving you money. Where's your parents? Like, what's going on in these sessions? Like, talk to the young kids. Please tell them. All right, this is your interview. What advice would you give young teenage kids going into sessions?
Going into sessions, number one, be suspicious of everybody. Because this is an industry with a lot of pedophiles.
Oh, okay. I wasn't ready for that one.
So I'm straight up. I'm straight up. So do not accept, the person who asked me to play, that was the person I spoke to. The person who gave me the sheet music, same person. The guy who handed me the money, this was the same guy. He was the producer. I was not talking to any of the other people who were hanging in that room. Because you do have people who just sort of hang out in the room and are there for nefarious reasons. And, all kinds of things can go wrong. If you are invited to an audition, bring somebody with you. the number of times I brought somebody with me to an audition, or I was the person that they brought to the audition. I remember a friend of mine was a singer. He was going for auditions, and my mother was like, "Go with him, go with him." And the number of times you go to an audition, and because you showed up with somebody, all of a sudden now they're angry and want to cancel the audition. That kind of thing is going to happen. If you're given
Wait, let's stop. They're angry because, briefly explain why. I just don't want it to go over anyone's head.
Oh, I'm sorry. They had no intention of auditioning you, at least not for what you thought.
You know R. Kelly? I just thought of that.
Yes. R. Kelly is, it's interesting because I think that there's a purpose to why the industry is doing this. I think he is not abnormal to what you will encounter in the music or in the entertainment business. He is not abnormal at all. It's just that he's somebody who got caught. And so, of course, the industry is going to quintuply vilify him, because then they're able to disassociate their own dirt by saying, "Oh, he's disgusting. Oh, he's evil. Oh, he's vile." And they're saying this. Meanwhile, if they're not doing the same thing, they're possibly enabling the same kind of thing.
Right.
But these are the pieces. These are the pieces. My advice to young people is, if you're offered a contract, you know what? The couple of $100 or the $1,000 that a lawyer to look it over is going to cost you is going to save you thousands to millions. You're going to get ripped off subsequently. When people are like, "Oh, I'm not getting a lawyer. That's expensive." Yeah. So,
yeah.
So is what you're going to lose. I can't name the company because of what I signed, but I was signed to a major. And the thing was, a bunch of us had gotten signed around the same time. I was the only one who had an attorney go through the contract. Consequently, a year later, I was the only one who had an escape clause, and everybody was stuck in the contract for another 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Read your contracts, go to an attorney.
It's not even because you can read it and still be like, "What?"
Okay.
I'm an English professor and can't understand half the contracts I'm
having. Okay. Good point. So let's segue now. Anything else about the industry behind the doors that you want to add before we jump into education and your college career?
Yeah, another piece. Record companies are banks. Thing that you see when you see on TV that an artist goes to a record company and you see them giving them a producer and you see all of this stuff happening and all of this, and their life changing. That's not the story. That work, especially now, labels want you to come with that work already done. And what they are doing is they are financing. They are financing the package that you have put together. It's not a factory where you walk in with talent and leave a package. The Motown days are done. The Motown days of the finishing school. And the thing was that a lot of people don't realize that was a unique thing. Record label, record companies went around and found acts that were already out on the road, polished, good to go. They wanted acts that could go in the studio and record in one take and get back out on the road. So the whole notion of investing in artists and dressing them up and teaching them to walk and speak well, and that was unique. But people thought that was the standard of the business, and no, it's not. The thing is, you have to have, if you're going into the music industry, you have to think like a private contractor. When I say think like a private contractor, a plumber doesn't show up to your house and expect you to have the tools and have the job. You have to go in with the tools. You have to, you have to go and get all the paperwork. You have to go get the financing. You have, so you are when you're going in as an artist, you're actually in a business. You're going in as a finished business, and what you're basically doing is going for a loan, essentially, to put your business out there further. But so that's the big thing. You got,
It's a bank
But
with interest, high interest. So
but
briefly, since we're there, let's just talk about, we're going to get to you, but this can help someone. How is that, how do they make you pay it back? What are the categories? Just maybe 4 or 5 that you could think of that you have to pay them back because of this,
recoupable losses.
okay, and
So
go.
before you see, so again, this is a loan. This is an investment loan. So that studio money, they have to make that back.
Boom,
Money that they advanced you for your music video, they have to make that back.
boom.
Money that they put out for your tour, they have to
Oh,
make that back. So whatever money they have put out for you, they have to make it back. Which is why it's better that if you go to a record company and you've gone in and did the recording yourself, and you now have a finished master, and you walk in with a finished master tape,
mm-hmm.
now you have firepower, because you can go to the label and say, I just want to lease, I'm going to lease this master to you.
Oh, look at that. Okay.
Because now it's a matter of, do you want to lease the and they can lease the master, or they can buy it from you. But now you're going in with an actual asset beyond just your talent.
Right. Now let's talk about your son, because he's of the new age. Is he independent, or is he looking for a bank loan?
He's independent.
Okay.
He's actually walking the line. He's got a plan A, plan B worked out.
Okay.
One thing is, he's more interested in being a producer. He raps and he sings, but he's really interested in producing other people.
Mm-hmm.
We have a family business. We have a recording studio, which is a family business, Polyphonic
Did I tell you
Studio.
I could sing? I'm sorry. I just
Oh, there
wanted you
you
to
go.
know that I could
All right.
sing. So if you were
When you
looking for new artists.
when you come on up to Massachusetts, we'll put you in the booth. No worry.
Yay! Okay, just wanted to let
But
you know.
yeah, but so with the recording studio, it's a matter of, all right, so if he goes to a record label, he's already got his master. They don't have to give him studio money. We've got a commercial recording studio. So bam, that's already out of the way. But the other piece he's looking at, plan A, is, okay, go to a bank loan, go to a label, sorry, I'm calling them a bank, go to a label, sign a project, understand that you're signing the project because you're coming in with your assets together. The advance that they give you is basically just that, an advance, meaning that you now don't have to spend it.
Mm-hmm.
So what he basically would do is sell the project to a label and utilize the funding from that to fund himself independently. The other thing that he's been doing is looking at setting up a business plan so that he can attract investors.
I like him. Get it, young Mwalim. Good. He had great teachers. Look at that.
ZYG 808 is the name you'll
So
find.
say it again.
ZYG 808.
808 kick. Boom.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Now with him here again, his first summer job, he was busking. He was out on the streets of Cape Cod and around Boston. He had a cocktail drum set, and what he would do is he would go out and play the drums and rap at the same time. And people were dropping money in his bucket left and right.
Okay. What is that called?
Busking.
Oh,
When you play out on the street for money.
Got it. Thank you.
And so that's what he did. And the thing was, he had one friend who tried to laugh at him till he pointed out that I made more money doing this than you did cutting lawns.
Mm-hmm.
Like about 3 times as much. So, it was, but in terms of sort of like looking at the business, it's funny because they pay attention to you so hard. And the busking principle came from, I have a band called the Groovalados. Now, I can brag about the Groovalados. They've got 6 Grammy nominations.
Wow.
And I can brag about my son. He's got 2. But
what? From busking? I need to get busking.
Well, what he did when he was busking was he then used that money, went in the studio, made a mixtape, and then started selling the mixtape. And then when somebody from the Recording Academy bought his mixtape, and the next thing he knows, 2 of his songs are nominated.
Only
So,
on this show, people. Only on this show will you get information like this. Wow.
but where he got the idea for busking was the year before when my band came out with our album. What we did for promotion was we decided we were going to do guerrilla street corner concerts. So we would go to a city, find a park. What I did first, by the way, was I researched freedom of speech rules and regulations in all the towns in like New England, and found that you don't, because some towns will say, oh, you need a license to perform. No, you don't. Perform out in the street. No, you don't need a license. Freedom of speech. So we would go, we would set up guerrilla concerts and we would perform. And this too, we didn't even really think about it. We put a bucket out in front of us, and then we realizing we were outside playing for an hour or two and we're making like about $1,000 from money being thrown in the bucket. And in fact, one time it was really funny. We were playing right across the street from a bar that we used to play in. And we were packing up just as the guys who were going to be playing in the bar were going in. And we realized we made playing in front of the bar for 2 hours, we made 4 times as much as we ever made playing inside the bar.
That's awesome.
Like, for all that time. So, but the thing was, he was with us when we were doing this. So he realized, oh, okay, that's what you do. This is how it works. Okay.
Each one teach one. That's right. You show them the way.
Yeah, and so he's building his concept around like what he, I guess, sees us doing.
Awesome. Way to go, son. Congratulations on that. Okay, so we've covered contracts, the bank, and busking. So now you put all that aside. We're going back now, everybody. We are rewinding. You're now 18 years old again, right? We're heading to college. What is your college of choice? Tell us what it was and why, and what your major was, undergraduate degree first.
All right. So I went to Boston University. I was originally thinking I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know why.
All that work, and here you go. Okay, yeah, it could happen.
Anyway, so I went to Boston U.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that the people we grew up with in New York were not white people. These were white people.
Really? Okay.
I did not. I realized that in New York, we grew up with Irishmen and Italians and Jews. We did not grow up with white people. But yeah, BU is where I discovered. In fact, it's really, to me, kind of ironic that they have a sort of a groundbreaking center on anti-racism studies, because I'm like, wow, you should be using this on y'all first. But nonetheless, that was also, I mean, good and bad experiences, but good experiences. I kept up with music and kept on with doing what I was doing with music. I kept up as a session player. But the wonderful things about BU, the Peace of Mind that you're going to be playing, Out of the Woods, actually got written in my dorm room.
Really?
Yeah.
That long ago? I mean, it was only 10 years ago, but wow. So audience, when you hear the name of what is it called again? Out of the Woods?
Out of the Woods.
It's like a club kind of groove. Awesome. Okay.
But yeah, I wrote, I had a little 4-track and keyboard and drum machine in my dorm room. So that was sort of like, that became, for a lot of the social ills of the place, that became part of my saving grace, was my little music corner.
So let me ask you, how many in your catalog, how many songs have you written? Do you know?
I could probably put out about 10 albums and not have to write a new piece of music for any of them.
How long does it normally take you to write?
I mean, it varies. There's like, I have some things that I've written. I have things that I've written on stage. And I have things that I've
wait, how does that work?
Well,
you're performing to a live audience. This is what's going on in my head. You're performing, and then you're on the other side, you're actually like writing a score. Like that's what I'm envisioning.
It wasn't a score. It was, okay, here's the deal. In fact, here, let me show you. So we're on stage. I'm with the Groovalados. We had 10 minutes before it was break time. So we're like, okay, it's a bar. Nobody's really caring what you're playing. So we're just rocking a groove. So we had the groove going. Do you mind if we dance with Joe Dates? You know, line from Animal House. Do you mind if we dance with Joe Dates? If you mind, you're probably in the wrong place. So that song got written on stage.
Wow. Wait,
now
don't
the
put that away. Don't put that away. Give it back. Go back. Go back. Because I'm going to ask you.
Incidentally, I just learned to play this 2 weeks ago. I'm 2 weeks in on learning how to play it. But
I want to see impromptu song and be nice with this interview of 15 Minutes of Fame. What energy is this 15 Minutes of Fame giving you? And go. And I promise I'll send you a contract to sign, and we're going to make lots of money and split it.
Sitting back thinking about times that passed. Always things that never last. I don't know.
You mean I caught the genius off guard? Moi? I love that you're not afraid to try new things like the guitar. I love it. And just keep learning. All right, so you're in Boston, graduating with a degree in liberal arts?
Yep, actually, liberal arts degree in music.
In music, okay. So what made you say, I want to go a little bit further. I want to get my master's. And where did you go? What was your major?
Well, while I undergrad, I was a music major specializing in composition and history.
Okay.
And the area of composition that I was most interested in was film score.
Oh. Okay.
Writing for film and theater. Well, while I'm working with some of the students in the College of Communications who are film students, and I'm writing music for their films, and I'm watching the whole editing process, I'm now completely fascinated. So in true Gemini tradition, when I graduate undergrad, I then enroll in the master's program in film production at BU.
Okay.
And the somewhat funny thing with that episode, I end up as a president's fellow, so I didn't have to pay for my master's degree.
Wow.
And
look at that.
Now here's one that I do not recommend.
Okay.
How I came to the president's attention. I was the president my senior year. My senior year, I was the president of Umoja, the Black Student Union. And for the second semester, I ended up leading a massive march on the acting president's office, demanding his resignation. And yeah.
That wasn't in the bio, but this is very interesting.
And
wow.
So needless to say, the interesting thing about the president was he admired the fact that I'm like, what you did was jacked. You were besmudging you're besmudging the reputation of the institution. We ended up having bunches of conversations. So the end result is when I'm applying for my master's degree, he's like, okay, you're a president's fellow.
Wow. Your activism at its best. Who knew?
Do not, like I said, do not try this at home.
Right.
But so I got a master's in film. At the same time, I was part of a theater company that had been started by one of the professors at BU, Professor James Spruill. And with Professor Spruill, he'd been part of the Black Arts movement in New York City in the 60s before he'd gone up to Boston U. His wife, who ran the company with him, it's called New African Company. His wife, who ran the company with him, she'd actually been part of the Black Panther Party in Boston. And she was a playwright. So while I'm in film school, I'm also studying theater with them. So I'm studying acting and I'm studying playwriting and studying directing. And this is, of course, helping with the stuff that I'm learning in film school because I'm primarily a screenwriting major
Yes.
in the master's program. And what I found was that film was so like expensive to produce that was really what pushed me back into theater. And that was where I started writing plays and sending plays out to competitions. And then my plays start getting produced. And as a director in a theater company, I'm actually able to direct some of my own shows. And so that's pretty much the trajectory of where that went.
Wow. Amazing. I have in front of us your website. And for a man that started out with just singing and playing the piano and the viola, has now turned in, you have a storyteller, an educator, and it says here even a life coach. Let's talk about some of the stories. Okay. Land of the Black Squirrels. Now, talk to us a little bit about this is one of the stories that you actually wrote.
Yeah, this is the novel. The
Novel.
Land of the Black Squirrels. Well, if you've ever been to the North Bronx, you know that the squirrels are all black. And so this is why it ended up with that title, Land of the Black Squirrels. It's one of the unique pieces of that part of the Bronx.
A quick synopsis of it, sir, so if anyone wants to purchase.
Oh, the synopsis? It's basically the story of an extended family of artists growing up in the Northeast Bronx, all stemming from, in 1969, an artist starts a arts academy, and little by little, all the kids who come through the academy become part of this group. And so it's loosely about, it's fiction. It's completely fictionalized.
Now, I have to ask you, do you have a score? I don't know if it's called a score, it's not a movie, but music attached to this. Like, do you have like a soundtrack for this in your head? Oh yeah. In fact, the album next to it is to some extent some of the music on that is actually the music that relates to the novel. I love it. Okay, awesome. All right, so we can hear all of this.
I can also, this is something that no one knows, so your audience will be the first to hear about this. Right now, we're working on the novel with the actor-director Naheem Garcia. And I would encourage people to Google Naheem Garcia if you don't know who Naheem Garcia is. But he and I and the publisher, Aisha Johnson, are actually going to be doing an audiobook version of this, but complete with the music score playing in the background.
That's what I'm talking about. Merging. I love it. And soon, you know what's coming next. Choreography. Merging. Choreography by Dawn Branch. Yes, it's a musical on Broadway. Why not?
There we go. There we go.
So, okay, this is just so much. All right, so if people wanted to get in contact you for hiring you for workshops, life coach, whatever, they would come to this website. And are you affordable? I just want to know. I'm just asking for a friend.
I am negotiable.
You're negotiable, right? Okay, awesome. Well, congratulations to everything. And guys, we're gonna have a chance to listen to.
What was that song go? I'm outside your budget, but I'm not overpriced. Yeah, well.
Right. And the new thing by Joey Crack. What does he say? Yesterday's price is not today's price. Yes?
Yeah.
So okay. I love this. Audience, we're gonna have a chance to listen to your song again before we go. The club song that you created in Boston. What's the name of that?
Yes. Out of the Woods.
Yes.
Out of the Woods, and it can be found on the album Polymath's Grotto.
That was amazing. I mean, I love a good club music, and I just want to know, like you wrote this almost 30, I don't want to say, but years ago, and it's like timeless now. Can you talk about a little bit about the process of that song before we let you go?
Well, I first also have to give a shout out to the Music and Art Lunchroom, um, and the people who occupied the Music and Art Lunchroom. Now, in particular, um, two people who come to mind, wonderful people. One, now another one of our famous classmates, Victor Cook.
Yay! Shout out to Mr. Cook.
Victor, and another beautiful brother from our class, Ephraim Capers.
Hi, Mr. Ephraim.
As a young man, I get a free pass to go to the Paradise Garage. So I'm like, oh, bet. Well, before I go to the Paradise Garage, these two gentlemen explained to me what you need to know if you're going to hang out at the Paradise Garage. So this is why I thank them forever. But to cut to the story, so I get into the Paradise Garage, and of course I'm introduced to the mixing, the maestro, Larry Levon.
Okay.
And nobody was calling it house music at that point. When we were in high school, they didn't call it house
What
music.
was it called?
It was garage music. It was the garage, it was the music out the garage. Little funny thing about the house music, they talk about house music is out of Chicago, and they talk about Frankie Knuckles.
Mm-hmm.
They never want to mention the fact that Frankie Knuckles is from the Bronx, and that Frankie Knuckles used to hang out in the Paradise Garage and at the Loft, which was an underground club down in Soho. So what he did was took what he heard them doing in Manhattan and took that to Chicago to the Warehouse. So house music is is really a New York thing, that went to Chicago.
My last question as we come to a close, I normally ask this as the first question. However, I decided to close with this. Who is Mwalim?
Who is Mwalim? Mwalim is the result of a young man named Morgan James Peters, who decided to consciously set out on a quest to learn about the parts of himself that the society was trying to hide from. Mwalim was the one who decided to open the doors in my spirit that everybody said don't open. And was able to show me ideas beyond the construct, shall we say. So it was more like Mwalim opened the doors for Morgan to walk through and Morgan to grow. Which is why I don't freak out when people call me Morgan, because they're the same person.
Thank you so much, Mwalim Morgan, for spending this hour with us. I've learned so much. I appreciate you. You are a genius. Many things are going on. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Rice. And thank you, Dr. Rice, for giving him the audacity to dream that he could become a better Morgan and grow into Mwalim. So thank you, sir. And I hope that we can work together in the future on many things. There's possibilities are endless. And thank you, audience, for watching 15 Minutes of Fame with Mwalim Peters. Thank you, guys.